The morning light hit the glass facade of Aerodyn Corporation like shards of gold. From the 45th floor, the city of New York stretched endlessly silver, cold, magnificent. Inside the boardroom, the world's youngest female CEO, Emma Carter, stood with her arms crossed, eyes locked on a sleek black helicopter model sitting in the center of the room. It was the X-9 Phoenix, Aerodyn's newest autonomous helicopter prototype. Billions of dollars had gone into its creation, an aircraft that could think, adapt, and fly itself. For Emma, this was more than a project. It was her inheritance, her legacy. She adjusted her tailored gray suit and exhaled slowly. "Today, gentlemen," she said, voice sharp like a command. "We make history. No more mistakes." The engineers nodded nervously. The atmosphere was electric cameras, investors, and reporters waited downstairs for the unveiling. And then the janitor walked in. A man in his late 30s, wearing the standard Navy uniform, pushing a mop bucket across the polished floor. His name tag read Jack M. He moved quietly, efficiently, almost invisible to the high heels and polished shoes around him. Emma glanced at him briefly. "Could you hurry up? This is not the time to mop the floor." Jack looked up for a second, his eyes calm gray, storm-like, with a trace of old pain buried beneath. "Just doing my job, ma'am," he said simply, and went back to work. The engineers chuckled under their breath. To them, Jack was a nobody, a ghost. Emma turned back to her team. "The press flight will happen at noon. I'll be in the control room," her assistant whispered. "Ma'am, the backup pilot's late." Emma groaned. "Perfect. A multi-billion-dollar project. And our pilot's stuck in traffic." Then, half joking, half frustrated, she said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Fly this helicopter and I'll marry you." The room burst into laughter. The tension broke. Someone slapped another on the shoulder. Jack froze mid-step, then lifted his head. His expression didn't change, but something flickered behind those eyes. He looked directly at Emma and said quietly, "You might want to remember that promise." The laughter died instantly. The tone of his voice calm, measured. Too confident, unsettled the room. Emma blinked, unsure whether he was mocking her back or dead serious. Before she could respond, he went back to pushing his mop, leaving a silent trail across the spotless marble floor. By noon, the rooftop landing pad was a chaos of activity. Technicians shouted over the roar of engines, camera crews adjusted their shots, and Emma, standing behind a wall of glass in the control room, gave orders through her headset. "Stabilize the gyro sensors," she said. "Confirm link with the autopilot module." "Confirmed, ma'am. We're ready for takeoff." The X-9 Phoenix lifted gracefully off the pad, rotor blades slicing the air like silver knives. Cheers erupted from the observers below. Emma's chest swelled with pride. Finally, she thought, this is the moment. But then the screens started to flicker. We're losing telemetry data," one engineer said. "Reboot the feed," Emma ordered. No response. The data streams went dead. "Ma'am, the pilot reports loss of manual control." The room froze. On the rooftop camera, the X-9 hovered uncertainly, tilting left, right, as if drunk. Then, in horrifying slow motion, it lurched upward uncontrollably. "Emergency override," Emma shouted. "Cut the engine." "I can't. The AI core's not responding, it's locked out." The helicopter climbed higher, erratic, spinning toward the city skyline. The reporters screamed from below. Emma's heartbeat slammed in her ears. "Call the pilot. What's going on?" No answer. The comms were dead. Manual override code Delta 9. "Doesn't work. The system's encrypted." Emma slammed her hand on the table. "Who wrote that encryption key?" The engineers exchanged terrified glances. No one spoke. Then a calm voice came from the back of the room. "It's not a bug. It's a defense protocol. Everyone turned. Jack was standing at the doorway, holding a small access tablet, the kind used for maintenance tasks. His expression was unreadable. Emma glared. "What are you doing here?" "Get out." He stepped closer. "You're not going to fix this from here. The system's in self-protect mode. It thinks it's under attack." "How do you know that?" she demanded. "Because," he said, typing on the tablet, "I built that protocol." A stunned silence fell over the room. Emma blinked. "You're a janitor." He glanced up at her. "Not always." The control room buzzed with disbelief. Jack plugged the tablet into the main console. Streams of green code flashed across the screens. "What are you doing?" an engineer shouted. "Bypassing the lockout," Jack said calmly. "You have about 60 seconds before that aircraft stalls mid-air." Emma stared. "That's military-grade code. How could you possibly—" Jack didn't look up. 40 seconds. "Security," she snapped. "Stop him." 2 guards stepped forward. Jack turned to them with quiet authority. "You touch this cable, and you'll be scraping what's left of that helicopter off Fifth Avenue." The guards froze. The confidence in his tone was absolute, not arrogant, just factual. 30 seconds, he muttered. His fingers flew across the keys. The system beeped. Error after error flashing red, then suddenly green. The room held its breath. Manual control restored. A voice from the radio said. On the monitor, the X9 stabilized, hovered for a moment, then began to descend smoothly. The rooftop crowd erupted in cheers again, unaware how close they had come to disaster. Emma exhaled shakily, her hands trembling. She looked at Jack, standing there, calm, as if nothing had happened. "What the hell just happened?" she whispered. Jack unplugged the tablet and met her eyes. "You almost lost your project. And your pilot. But don't worry, it's safe now." "Who are you?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "Just someone who used to care too much about helicopters." And before she could ask another word, he turned and walked out of the control room, disappearing down the corridor as quietly as he had arrived. That night, Emma sat alone in her penthouse, the city lights glittering like broken stars beyond the glass walls. She poured herself a drink, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. On her tablet, she replayed the footage from earlier. Frame by frame, she zoomed in on Jack's face as he worked the precision, the focus, the speed. That wasn't some lucky guess. That was training. Military training. Her AI assistant chimed softly. "Would you like to perform a personnel search, Miss Carter?" She hesitated, then said, "Yes." "Jack Miller. Aerodyne maintenance staff." The file opened. Emma's glass froze halfway to her lips. "Restricted," she whispered. She opened a secondary search, linking to the Federal Archive. One match appeared, Captain Jack Miller, former U.S. Air Force test pilot, classified operations, discharged after an unspecified personal loss. The report cut off there. Emma sat back, stunned. The man she'd mocked in front of everyone, the man she'd called a janitor. He'd once been one of the top military pilots in the country, and now he worked in her building. The following morning, rain fell over the city like a gray curtain. The streets below Aerodyne glistened in puddles of silver and light. But inside the building, the mood was darker than the weather. Emma arrived early, earlier than she'd ever come before. The security guards at the front desk exchanged nervous glances. She didn't even notice. She went straight to the basement maintenance floor, heels echoing down the concrete hall. The door read, "Custodial Services." She hesitated, then knocked. No answer. She opened it anyway. The small room smelled faintly of detergent and old coffee. A metal locker stood open, half empty. Inside hung a single uniform, folded neatly. On the desk was a worn photograph, a young woman holding a little boy in her arms, both smiling beside a military helicopter. Emma's breath caught. The edges of the photo were burned, as if rescued from fire. She turned as a voice came from behind her. "You really shouldn't be here." Jack stood at the doorway, wearing his plain work jacket, sleeves rolled up, a streak of grease across one arm. He didn't look surprised to see her, only tired. Emma straightened, trying to regain composure. "You weren't at roll call this morning." "I came to talk." "About what?" he asked quietly. "About yesterday." He walked past her, sat down at the desk, and started packing the contents of the drawer into a small duffel bag. "Yesterday was a mistake." "A mistake?" she repeated, stunned. "You saved my company. You saved lives." He didn't look up. "That helicopter shouldn't have been flying in the first place." She frowned. "What do you mean?" Jack zipped the bag, exhaled slowly. "The control algorithm you tested, it's built on a classified framework. The Air Force abandoned that model years ago after a fatal crash. Someone must have revived it without knowing why it was discontinued." Emma felt the room tilt slightly. "That's impossible. Our engineers," he cut her off, "don't even know half of what's in the system they're using. You bought old tech, repackaged it, and called it innovation." His words hit like a slap. Emma's jaw tightened. "You think you can walk in here and lecture me about my company?" Jack finally met her eyes. "Your father's company." The silence stretched like a taut wire. He rose from the chair, grabbed the duffel bag, and started toward the door. "Wait," she said softly. He stopped, but didn't turn. "I know who you are, Captain Miller." That made him freeze. Emma continued, her voice low. "I looked you up last night. The Air Force records, the classified files. I know you lost your family in a crash. I also know the aircraft involved used aerodyn components." Jack's knuckles whitened on the strap of his bag. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, quietly, he said, "That's why I'm here." He turned to face her, eyes burning with a quiet fury that made her chest tighten. "Your father signed off on that part, the same faulty actuator that failed mid-flight. My wife was the systems engineer on board. She trusted your technology." Emma's breath hitched. I didn't know." "No," he said flatly. "You didn't. And maybe that's why you're still standing here, pretending the sky belongs to you." He walked past her again, but this time she didn't let him go. "Then, why save me?" she whispered. Jack paused at the door, his reflection caught in the glass, half in shadow, half in light. "Because no one deserves to die for someone else's mistakes." And then he was gone. That afternoon, Aerodyn buzzed with scandal. Rumors spread fast. Whispers about a janitor hacker, about government code, about the near disaster. Emma shut herself in her office, replaying the conversation in her head until it felt like an echo she couldn't escape. The rain hadn't stopped. It drummed against the glass walls like a metronome of guilt. At 3 p.m., her assistant entered. "Ma'am, the investors are demanding answers. They want to know who that man was." Emma stood at the window, staring out at the city skyline. "Tell them the truth," she said. The assistant blinked. "The truth?" "Yes," she murmured. "For once. We'll start there." 3 days later, Emma tracked Jack down at a rundown airfield outside Brooklyn, the kind where old veterans repaired aircrafts no one else wanted. The air smelled of oil and rain-soaked asphalt. He was there, of course, sleeves rolled up, working beneath the wing of an old Bell 412 helicopter. She stood behind him for a moment before speaking. "You still fly?" Jack didn't look up. "Not for anyone else." She took a step closer. "I'm not here to apologize," she said. "I'm here to make things right." He smirked faintly. "People like you don't make things right. You make press releases." Her jaw clenched. "You think I don't care? I think you don't know what caring costs." The wind howled across the open field. Somewhere, thunder rolled in the distance. Emma took a deep breath. "Help me fix the X9. You know it better than anyone. Help me make it safe." Jack wiped his hands on a rag, finally turning to face her. "You want me to rebuild the machine that killed my family?" She met his gaze steadily. "No. I want you to build something new, something that honors them." He studied her for a long time, searching for a lie, a weakness. But all he found was exhaustion, and maybe a hint of sincerity she didn't know how to hide. Finally, he sighed. "You don't give up easily, do you?" She shook her head. "Not when lives are at stake." For the first time, Jack's expression softened. "You sound like a pilot." Over the next weeks, the unlikely pair worked side by side. In the dim hum of the hangar, surrounded by rotors and wiring, they rebuilt the aircraft from scratch, not just to fly, but to redeem. Emma learned things she never thought she would. How to calibrate a rotor blade, how to read flight diagnostics, how to feel the rhythm of an engine instead of just seeing numbers on a report. And in return, Jack learned to speak again to trust, even if only in small fragments. There were moments brief, unguarded ones, when she'd catch him looking at the sky, as if remembering someone. When he'd pause mid-sentence, his voice trailing off into silence. She never asked, and he never told. But the air between them began to shift less cold, less guarded. One night, after a long day of testing, Emma stood on the tarmac watching the sunset bleed across the horizon. Jack walked up beside her, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Looks almost like fire," he said. She smiled faintly. "You always see danger in beauty, don't you?" He sipped his coffee. "Experience teaches you that." For a while, they just stood there quiet, the wind tugging at their clothes, the fading light painting their faces in gold. Emma turned to him suddenly. "If you could fly again, would you?" He looked at her, then at the old helicopter glinting in the distance. "I don't know," he said. "Flying used to mean freedom. Then it became a reminder." "Of what?" He hesitated. "Of what I lost." She nodded, eyes soft. "Then maybe it's time it reminded you of what you still have." Jack didn't answer, but his fingers tightened around the coffee cup. Weeks passed. The X-9 Phoenix II, redesigned, rebuilt, reborn, was ready. The world was watching again. Investors, military officials, media. Emma stood in the control center, headset on, heart pounding. Jack, in the pilot's seat, glanced up at the camera feed. "You sure about this, Carter?" She smirked through the mic. "You're the one who built it. I should be asking you that." The rotors began to spin. "Ready for liftoff," Jack said. "Cleared for flight," she replied. The helicopter rose smoothly into the sky, higher, faster, steady. Cheers erupted in the control room. Then, silence. The radio crackled. "Emma, we've got a problem." The helicopter hovered 6,000 feet above the Hudson River when the console flickered. Inside the cockpit, Jack's eyes darted over the controls, every instinct screaming that something wasn't right. "Emma," he said through the headset, voice tight but steady. "I'm getting an unstable reading from the hydraulic array." Static hissed in reply. Then her voice came, low and calm but layered with tension. "Can you compensate?" "Trying." His fingers flew across the switches. "It's not responding. The backup flight controller isn't syncing." In the control room, Emma leaned over the technician's shoulder. "Get me a visual." The screen filled with Jack's cockpit feed, warning lights flashing red like tiny screams. "Check. Abort. Bring her down." "Negative," he said, jaw set. "If I cut thrust now, we'll lose rotor balance. I need altitude to stabilize." "Jack, trust me." He flipped a manual lever, and the X-9 jerked upward, slicing into the clouds like a silver phantom. Emma's hands trembled on the console. The entire room was silent, the world outside shrinking to the sound of one man's voice and a machine's heartbeat. 20 minutes later, the helicopter landed safely. No reporter saw it. No cameras rolled, but Emma was waiting on the pad, wind tearing through her hair as Jack climbed out of the cockpit. His face was streaked with sweat, his expression unreadable. She walked toward him, her heels clicking against the metal deck. What the hell was that? He didn't look at her. A warning. A warning? She snapped. From what, the machine? He turned, finally meeting her eyes. No. From whoever doesn't want this aircraft to exist. The words hung in the air, heavy as thunder. What are you saying? I'm saying, he said quietly. Someone inside your company is tampering with the systems. You think it's about innovation. It's not. It's about control. Emma stared at him. The rain beginning to fall again. Soft. Relentless. You think we're being sabotaged? I know we are. She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. He wasn't guessing. He was remembering. Jack. She said softly. The crash. That took your wife. Wasn't an accident, he finished for her. It was the same code, the same firmware corruption. They buried it, called it human error. I tried to expose it, but the files vanished before I could reach command. Her throat tightened. My father's board was in charge then. He nodded once. Yeah. The rain came harder now, pattering against steel, echoing between them. Then help me find the truth, she said quietly. Jack studied her for a long moment, then gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. That night, the two of them stayed in the Aerodyn data lab long after everyone else had gone home. The glow of the monitors painted their faces in pale blue light. Lines of code scrolled down the screens, endless strings of numbers and commands. Emma leaned forward, her brow furrowed. It's encrypted. Jack's fingers danced over the keyboard. Military-grade cipher. But whoever wrote this didn't expect me to come back. You think this goes beyond Aerodyn? He didn't answer, just typed faster. The air hummed with tension. Finally, a window blinked open. A hidden directory appeared on screen. Phoenix. Archive, divided by restricted. Inside were crash reports, prototype logs, and encrypted communications between Aerodyn executives and unnamed defense contractors. Emma scrolled through the files, her heart pounding. Oh my God! The reports confirmed that Aerodyn's original AI had been rushed to production despite multiple failures. Her father had signed off on it to secure a billion-dollar military deal. The faulty actuator, the one that killed Jack's wife, was part of that cover-up. Emma covered her mouth, her voice breaking. He knew. He knew. And he let it happen. Jack's hands clenched into fists. He turned away, eyes dark with restrained rage. Emma looked at him, guilt washing through her like cold water. Jack. I'm so sorry. He shook his head. Don't be sorry. Be smart. They'll come after us for finding this. She swallowed hard. What do we do? He looked back at her, and for the first time, his voice softened. We do what pilots always do when the system fails. She frowned. What's that? Take manual control. By morning, Aerodyn was crawling with security. The system breach had been detected. Emma was summoned to the boardroom, where half a dozen executives sat in stiff silence. At the head of the table sat Richard Hale, her late father's closest partner, now chairman of the board. His smile was sharp, his eyes colder than the marble floor beneath them. Emma, he began smoothly. We have a serious problem. Someone accessed confidential archives last night. Do you have any idea who might be responsible? She kept her face neutral. We're investigating. Good, he said, steepling his fingers. Because if this leaks, Aerodyn will be finished, and so will your career. Emma nodded, excused herself, and the moment she left the room, she texted one word to Jack. Run. Jack was already gone. He'd anticipated it. When the security sweep reached the hangar, all they found was an empty workbench and a single note taped to the flight controls. You can't bury the truth forever. Emma destroyed the security copy before Hale could see it. Then she slipped into the elevator, heart hammering. She had to find Jack before Hale's men did. She found him 2 hours later at the same Brooklyn airfield, the rain turning the runway into a mirror of gray. He was loading equipment into a small transport chopper, preparing to leave. "You were going to vanish without saying goodbye?" she asked, stepping out of her car. Jack turned, startled. "You shouldn't be here." "I had to be." He sighed, looking at her exhaustion, admiration, regret all tangled in one glance. "You don't understand. They'll come after you too. Then we face it together." He shook his head. "You're not built for running. And you're not built for hiding," she shot back. For a moment, silence. The only sound was the rain hitting metal. Then she said softly, "If you really want to end this, let me help." Jack exhaled, defeated. "You don't give up, do you?" She smiled faintly. "Not when I believe in something." He gave a short laugh, low, rough, almost tender. "You sound like someone I used to know." They spent the next 2 nights gathering evidence, preparing to expose Hale and the defense network behind him. It was dangerous work, encrypted backups, off-site servers, dead-man switches, but Jack knew the system better than anyone alive. Somewhere in that chaos, between adrenaline and exhaustion, something unspoken began to grow, a quiet bond, forged not in romance, but in shared survival. At dawn, when the city lights dimmed, Emma would find him asleep at the console, his head resting on crossed arms. She'd cover him with her jacket, her fingers lingering just long enough to feel the warmth of his pulse. And sometimes, he'd wake and find her staring at the horizon, eyes heavy with guilt, but glimmering with hope. He never said it aloud, but she reminded him of what he'd lost: trust, connection, and the courage to live again. One evening, as they finalized the evidence, Jack looked up from his screen. "When this is over," he said quietly, "I'll disappear again. You should know that." Emma's heart clenched. "You don't have to." He gave a small smile. "Yeah, I do. People like me don't get clean endings." She shook her head, stepping closer. "Maybe this time, you could try." For a long moment, he just looked at her and then, slowly, reached out, brushing his fingers against hers. "I'll think about it," he murmured. But fate had other plans. The next day, Aerodyne servers were hit by a cyber attack, a full-scale breach traced to the very files they'd stolen. Hale had found them. By nightfall, armed agents surrounded the airfield. Jack grabbed Emma by the hand. "We have to move." They ran through the rain, toward the X-9 Phoenix II, their rebuilt prototype, now their only way out. As bullets struck the tarmac around them, Jack shouted, "Get in!" Emma hesitated. "You're not flying this thing alone again." He gave her that half-smile she'd come to hate and love all at once. "Then I guess you're coming with me." The engines roared to life. The helicopter lifted off the ground, wind howling around them as the searchlights slashed through the storm. Emma strapped into the co-pilot seat. Her hands shook, but her voice was steady. "You said I needed to learn how to fly." Jack glanced at her, grinning through the chaos. "Then, let's teach you." And with that, the X-9 shot upward into the night, lightning flashing across the sky. Two souls bound by truth, pain, and something neither of them dared to name yet. The desert sun hung low over Dubai, a burning coin in a molten sky. The International Aerotech Expo sprawled across the dunes like a city of glass and steel, shimmering beneath the heat haze. It had been 3 months since the night they escaped New York. 3 months since Jack Miller and Emma Carter vanished from every record, every boardroom whisper. Now, they were here, ghosts among the living, with a single goal: to reveal the truth to the world. Emma stood before a mirror inside the private hangar, fastening the collar of her flight suit. Her reflection looked older, not in years, but in weight. The kind of maturity that only comes from guilt and fire. Behind her, Jack adjusted his headset, the faint smell of engine fuel clinging to him. He still carried that quiet storm in his eyes. But now, there was something softer, too, something that belonged only to her. "You don't have to go up there," he said. Emma turned, meeting his gaze. "I told you I'd finish what we started." He sighed. You're a CEO, not a pilot. I've been learning, she said, half a smile curling on her lips. From the best. Jack looked at her for a long moment, then handed her a pair of gloves. Then you'd better not crash my masterpiece, she smirked. You mean our masterpiece? Outside, the expo's crowd roared as the announcer's voice thundered through the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, Aerodyn Industries presents the rebirth of flight, the Phoenix 2. The hangar doors opened, with a mechanical hiss. The helicopter gleamed under the sun-matte silver. Elegant and lethal. Reborn from ashes, Emma climbed into the co-pilot seat. Jack followed, flicking switches with muscle memory so precise it looked like choreography. Systems check, he said. All green, she replied. Her hands steady on the controls. Then let's give them a show. The Phoenix 2 lifted off, the rotors slicing through the desert wind. Dust spiraled below as the crowd erupted in cheers. From the viewing deck, Richard Hale watched, face pale and furious. He hadn't realized until too late who was piloting. Beside him, his assistant whispered, "Sir, what should we do?" Hale's jaw tightened. "Shut it down." "But, Seer, do it." In the cockpit, alarms blared. The navigation screen blinked red. Emma's voice sharpened. "We're being locked out of flight control," Jack cursed under his breath. "It's them." Hale's team just hijacked the autopilot system. "Can you override it?" "Not fast enough." The helicopter lurched violently, banking hard toward the city skyline. The crowd below screamed as the Phoenix 2 spiraled into a nosedive. Emma's hand gripped the side rail. "Jack, I've got it." The control stick resisted like a living thing. Sweat rolled down his neck as he fought the system's AI, a ghost of his own creation, now turned against him. For a moment, the two locked eyes. "This isn't just about you anymore," she said over the roar. "It's about the truth. The world deserves to see what they did." He met her gaze calm, resolute. "Then let's make them see it." He yanked the emergency power circuit. Sparks burst behind the control panel. The system's digital voice screamed, "Manual override engaged." The Phoenix jerked violently, the automated AI shutting down. Silence, except for the pounding of rotor blades. Jack's hands moved with deadly precision. His voice was steady again. "You've got to trust me, Emma." "I already do." They pulled together, guiding the helicopter away from the skyscrapers, climbing higher, faster up into the sun-drenched sky. In the control tower, Hale shouted orders into his phone. "Cut the feed." Now. But it was too late. Every monitor in the expo hall flickered, and suddenly, the screens filled with encrypted data. Files, reports, contracts. The evidence Jack and Emma had uncovered streamed live worldwide. Gasps erupted across the audience. The words Aerodyn cover-up flashed on giant LED walls. Hale's face drained of color. And in the sky above, the Phoenix 2 blazed across the horizon, leaving a streak of silver fire in its wake, the symbol of truth finally breaking free. But the victory came at a cost. Jack's console sparked violently. Smoke filled the cockpit. "Hydraulic leak," he shouted. "We're losing power." Emma coughed, trying to see through the haze. "Can we make it back?" He glanced at the altimeter, 3,000 feet, and dropping. "Not both of us." She turned to him sharply. "Don't you dare." He forced a small smile. "You remember what you said the first day we met?" Her voice broke. "Jack, fly this helicopter and I'll marry you." She stared at him, tears cutting through the soot on her face. "Don't you dare turn that into a goodbye." He reached over, brushing a strand of hair from her face, a gesture so soft it almost didn't belong in that moment. "Then make it a promise." He hit the manual eject for her seat before she could stop him. "Jack!" She screamed as the glass canopy exploded upward, launching her clear into the sky. The Phoenix 2 spiraled downward, a comet of metal and flame, disappearing into the dunes with a sound that split the horizon. Emma's parachute opened. She landed hard, the world spinning around her, dust choking the air. She tore off her helmet, stumbling toward the wreckage. Flames licked the sand. The heat seared her lungs. "Jack!" She screamed again and again, her voice hoarse and raw. Rescue teams arrived within minutes, pulling her back as the helicopter burned itself into silence. Days passed in a blur. News of the Aerodyn scandal swept the world. Hale was arrested. The truth was everywhere. But for Emma, none of it mattered. The world had justice. She had a void. 3 months later, New York City. Emma stood on the rooftop of Aerodyn's rebuilt headquarters. The wind off the Hudson was sharp and cold, the sky heavy with snow. The company had been stripped down, reborn under a new name. Phoenix Systems, a foundation for ethical aviation. She laid a single dog tag on the memorial plaque engraved simply, "Jack Miller, pilot, husband, hero." Her hand trembled as she whispered, "You kept your promise." Then a faint sound behind her. A low, steady rhythm. Whoop, whoop, whoop. She turned and froze. Out of the fog, a helicopter descended, old, patched together, unmistakably familiar. The cockpit door opened. A man stepped out, silhouetted against the city lights. "Thought I'd never see you fly again," she said, tears blurring her vision. Jack smiled, a faint scar tracing his temple. "Told you I was hard to kill." She ran to him, her laugh breaking through a sob. You. He caught her in his arms, the wind roaring around them. "I never break a promise," he murmured. "You said if I flew this helicopter." She pressed a hand to his chest, finishing the sentence through tears. "You'd marry me." He grinned. "Still mean it." Instead of answering, she kissed him there, on the rooftop where everything began. The snow fell around them like ash and forgiveness. And above them, the city lights shimmered, reflections of two souls who had finally come home. Months later, the Phoenix Flight Academy opened its doors, dedicated to teaching ethical engineering and flight innovation. At its entrance, a bronze plaque bore a single inscription: "Flight is not about escape, it's about redemption. Captain Jack Miller." In the distance, a silver helicopter cut across the sunrise, piloted by Emma Carter Miller. Beside her, Jack watched the horizon and smiled. "Ready to fly again?" she asked. "Always," he said. And as the sky opened wide before them, the Phoenix soared not as a machine, but as a promise fulfilled.